Hi everyone, my name's Andy and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be talking about the disappearance of Jennifer Kesse. Imagine leaving for work on a completely ordinary Tuesday morning. You lock your front door, grab your keys, get into your car, and then you simply vanish. No witnesses, no signs of a struggle, no phone calls, no ransom demands, no body. Nothing. For nearly 20 years, investigators have been trying to answer a single question. What happened to Jennifer Kesse? And while there are many unsolved missing persons cases, this one stands apart for one very frustrating reason. Police may actually have footage of the person connected to the disappearance, but thanks to an unbelievable coincidence, the suspect's face was hidden in every single frame. Today, we are diving into one of the most baffling unsolved disappearances in American history. This is the story of Jennifer Kesse. Before we begin, if you enjoy true crime, internet mysteries, and unexplained disappearances, make sure that you subscribe. And as always, remember that this case involves a real person with a real family still searching for answers. Let's get into it. Who was Jennifer Kesse? Jennifer Joyce Kesse was born on May 20th, 1981. She grew up in Florida with her parents Drew and Joyce Kesse and her younger brother Logan. By all accounts, Jennifer was the kind of person who seemed destined for success. Friends described her as intelligent, responsible, focused, and independent. The type of person who always had a plan. She attended the University of Central Florida, where she earned a degree in finance. And after graduation, she quickly began climbing the corporate ladder. At only 24 years old, Jennifer already had a career many people twice her age would envy. She worked as a finance manager for a major timeshare company. She was financially stable, she had long-term goals, and most importantly, she had just purchased her very first home, a condo in Orlando. Now, if you're 24 years old and buying property in one of the fastest growing cities in Florida, you're probably doing pretty well. Jennifer's family says she was incredibly proud of this accomplishment. The condo represented independence, a fresh start, the next chapter of her life. And it wasn't just her career that was thriving. Jennifer also was in a serious relationship with her boyfriend, Rob Allen. Two had been dating for just over a year. Family members described their relationship as stable and healthy, and many believed that marriage was not far away. Everything appeared to be moving in the right direction for Jennifer, which is exactly why what happens next makes so little sense. In January of 2006, Jennifer and Rob took a vacation together to St. Croix in the US Virgin Islands. The trip lasted several days. Photos from the vacation show a happy couple enjoying time together. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming, and no signs of conflict. No indication that Jennifer was under any sort of stress. When the trip ended, they returned to Florida, and Jennifer headed back to Orlando and Rob returned to work. And life resumed as normal. Or at least it seemed normal. Later, Jennifer would tell family members something that investigators would never forget. Her condo complex was undergoing extensive renovations. Many of the units were vacant. Construction workers frequently moved throughout the property. Jennifer reportedly told her family members that some of the workers made her incredibly uncomfortable. She felt as though she was being watched. Some workers had whistled at her, others stared. The comments weren't necessarily criminal, but they were enough to make her uneasy. At the time, nobody considered these concerns especially significant. Unfortunately, after Jennifer disappeared, those comments would take on an entirely new meaning. January 23rd, 2006. The day before Jennifer disappeared, Jennifer went to work as normal. She returned home that evening. Around 6 p.m., she spoke with some family members. Everything sounded normal. Later that night, she talked on the phone with Rob. Again, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. No arguments, no concerns, no indication that anything was wrong. The conversation ended around 10 p.m. Neither Jennifer nor Rob could have imagined it would be the last time they would ever speak. Investigators believe Jennifer spent the rest of the evening preparing for work the next morning. And that's where the timeline becomes terrifying. Because sometime between waking up the next day and arriving at work, Jennifer vanished completely. January 24th, 2006. Jennifer is expected at work, but she never arrives. Now, most people occasionally run late. Maybe traffic is bad, maybe an alarm doesn't go off, maybe someone calls in sick. But Jennifer wasn't known for doing that. Jennifer was dependable, extremely dependable. When she failed to appear, co-workers immediately became concerned. They attempted to call her, to no avail. They called again, still nothing. Soon, her phone began going straight to voicemail. As the day continued, concern turned to alarm. Eventually, Jennifer's parents were contacted, and they immediately knew something wasn't right. Jennifer would simply never disappear without telling someone, especially not her family, especially not her boyfriend, and especially not her employer. So Drew and Joyce Kesse got in their car and drove approximately 2 hours to Orlando. And what they discovered at Jennifer's condo would only deepen the mystery. When Jennifer's parents entered her condo, they found evidence suggesting she had gotten ready for work that morning. But Jennifer herself was not there. And within 48 hours, police would discover something even more chilling. Jennifer's car, abandoned, and surveillance footage showing a mysterious person who remains unidentified to this day. But the strangest part? Investigators never got a clear look at the person's face. Not once, and we will get into all of that next. When Jennifer's parents arrived at her condo, they expected to find a simple explanation. Maybe she was sick, or had a minor emergency, or she'd gone somewhere unexpectedly. But what they found inside immediately convinced them that something was very wrong. Jennifer wasn't there, her car wasn't there, and nobody had heard from her. At first glance, the condo looked relatively normal. There was no obvious signs of a violent struggle, no broken furniture, no smashed windows, no evidence that somebody had forced their way inside, but there were several details that stood out. A wet towel was reportedly hanging in the bathroom. Personal items suggested that she had gotten ready for work that morning. To Jennifer's family, it looked like her day had begun the way it always had, and then somehow, something interrupted her routine. One theory investigators considered was that Jennifer had been abducted after leaving her condo, but before reaching her vehicle. Another possibility had been that something happened in the parking lot. Unfortunately, there were no cameras covering the area where Jennifer normally parked her car. And without witnesses, investigators had very little to work with. The most important thing missing from the scene was Jennifer's black Chevrolet Malibu. If they could find the car, maybe they'd find answers. At that point, nobody knew that the car would soon be one of the most important pieces of evidence for the entire case. 2 days after Jennifer disappeared, investigators finally got a major break. A resident at a nearby apartment complex recognized a vehicle from local news coverage. Parked in the lot was Jennifer's black Chevrolet Malibu. The location was less than a mile away from her condo. The discovery immediately triggered a massive response from police. Police secured the area and began processing the vehicle. This was the moment investigators had been waiting for. After all, if someone had taken Jennifer against her will, surely they would have left evidence behind. But the results would prove frustrating. The vehicle appeared unusually clean. Investigators believed someone may have intentionally wiped down portions of the car. Only limited forensic evidence was recovered. Even more puzzling, several valuable items remained inside. This was important because it suggested robbery was out of the question. Whoever abandoned the vehicle wasn't interested in stealing Jennifer's belongings. The car had seemingly been used for one purpose, transportation, and then abandoned. But the biggest breakthrough wasn't inside the vehicle. It was on surveillance camera footage. This is the moment that transformed Jennifer Kesse's disappearance into one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in America. A surveillance camera at the apartment complex captured someone parking Jennifer's vehicle. The footage showed a person calmly walking away from the car. No rush, no panic, and no obvious concern about being seen. Just a casual walk across a parking lot. At first, investigators were thrilled. They finally had a suspect, or at least someone connected to the crime. Then they reviewed the footage more carefully and realized something unbelievable. As the individual walked past the fence line, vertical fence posts repeatedly blocked their face from the camera's view. Frame after frame, image after image. Every single time the camera captured the person's face, a fence post was directly in the way. It almost sounds impossible, but that's exactly what happened. Police later released still images to the public. People across the country examined the photos. Investigators enhanced the footage. Experts studied every single detail. And yet, nobody could determine the person's identity. The person may have been standing just a few feet from the camera, and yet investigators never got a clear look of their face. Many people consider it one of the most frustrating pieces of surveillance footage ever captured and ever recovered in a criminal investigation. Naturally, investigators wanted to know one thing. Who was the person seen abandoning Jennifer's car? Unfortunately, even basic details were difficult to confirm. Experts estimated the individual was somewhere between 5'3" and 5'6". Some investigators speculated the person could have been a woman. Others believed it was a man. The video quality wasn't good enough to know for certain. And that's where the mystery deepens. Was this person Jennifer's abductor? An accomplice? Someone hired to move the vehicle? Or simply an individual who stumbled into a situation they didn't fully understand? Nobody knows. What investigators did know was whoever parked that car likely possessed crucial information about Jennifer's disappearance, even if they weren't directly responsible. Unfortunately, despite years of publicity, nobody has ever been identified as the individual in the footage. Not publicly, anyway. And that left investigators right back where they started, searching for a missing woman with very few leads. As news of Jennifer's disappearance spread, law enforcement launched an extensive search effort. Friends, family, volunteers, investigators, everyone was out looking for answers. Thousands of flyers were distributed, tips poured in, searches were conducted throughout the Orlando area. Police examined Jennifer's personal life, her work life, her finances, her relationships, everything. But they kept running into the same conclusion. Nothing suggested Jennifer wanted to disappear. She had future plans, career goals, a serious relationship, and strong family connections. There was no evidence that she had packed her belongings or withdrawn large sums of cash, no indication she intended to start over somewhere else. From the beginning, investigators believed Jennifer was likely the victim of a crime. The question was, what crime and who committed it? One theory quickly attracted attention: the construction workers at Jennifer's condo complex. Remember those comments Jennifer reportedly made before she disappeared? The feeling that some of the workers were watching her, the catcalling, the uncomfortable interactions. Investigators learned that numerous workers had access to different areas of the property. Some units were vacant, others were being renovated, and workers moved in and out throughout the day. Naturally, police began examining whether one or more of the workers could be connected to Jennifer's disappearance. According to reports, several workers left the area shortly after Jennifer vanished. Others were difficult to locate. Some returned to different states or countries. This fueled years of speculation. Online forums became filled with theories. Many people believed answers lied somewhere within that construction crew. But here's the important distinction. Suspicion is not evidence. Despite extensive scrutiny, investigators never publicly announced enough evidence to charge any worker in connection with Jennifer's disappearance. And that's what makes this case so frustrating. There are theories, there are possibilities, and there are people who raise questions, but there are very few definitive answers. As the investigation continued, the Kesse family began growing increasingly frustrated with law enforcement. Years passed, leads dried up, and eventually Jennifer's parents would take an extraordinary step that almost no family ever takes. They sued for access to the case files themselves. As weeks turned into months, and months turned into years, Jennifer's family found themselves trapped in a nightmare. Every morning they woke up hoping for a phone call, a tip, a breakthrough, anything. Instead, they were met with silence. Most missing persons cases receive intense attention during the first few days. After that, public interest often fades. But for Jennifer's parents, Drew and Joyce Kesse, giving up was never an option. They appeared in countless interviews, worked with media outlets, maintained websites dedicated to Jennifer's case, and continued pushing investigators to pursue every possible lead. Because in their minds, somewhere out there knew what happened. Someone had seen something. Someone had information that could only bring answers. The challenge was finding that person before memories faded forever. Over the years, criticism of the investigation grew. Some family members and supporters believed crucial opportunities may have been missed during the earlier stages of the case. Now, it's important to remember that hindsight is always clearer than real life. Investigators were dealing with limited evidence and an enormous number of possibilities. However, several concerns repeatedly surfaced. One issue involved the construction workers who had been present during Jennifer's disappearance. Critics argued that not every worker was thoroughly identified and tracked immediately after Jennifer's disappearance. Others questioned whether potential witnesses were interviewed quickly enough. Again, these criticisms do not necessarily mean mistakes caused the case to remain unsolved, but they contributed to a growing sense of frustration among those closest to Jennifer. As years passed without any arrests or major developments, confidence in the investigation began to erode, and eventually the Kesse family decided to take matters into their own hands. In 2018, more than a decade after Jennifer vanished, her family made a remarkable decision. They filed a lawsuit seeking access to thousands of pages of investigative records. Most families rely entirely on law enforcement to handle a criminal investigation. The Kesses felt they needed to review the evidence themselves. Maybe someone outside of law enforcement would notice a connection others had missed. The legal battle attracted national attention. Eventually, the family gained access to a substantial portion of the case files. Private investigators began reviewing years of evidence. Tips were re-examined, witness statements were revisited. Potential suspects were analysed again. And for the first time in years, there was renewed momentum and renewed hope. Whenever a case remains unsolved for nearly 2 decades, theories naturally emerge. Some are reasonable, some are wild, and some exist somewhere in between. Let's look at the most wildly discussed possibilities. Theory number 1. A construction worker or workers. This remains one of the most common theories. Supporters point to Jennifer's comments about feeling uncomfortable around certain workers. They note that many of the workers had access to the complex, and they also point out that some individuals reportedly became difficult to locate after Jennifer disappeared. However, there has never been any publicly released evidence providing a specific worker abducted Jennifer. This theory remains plausible but unproven. Theory number 2, a crime of opportunity. Some investigators suggested Jennifer may have encountered a stranger while walking to her vehicle. In this scenario, the crime wasn't carefully planned. Instead, an offender saw an opportunity and acted. This theory could explain why Jennifer vanished so quickly. The problem? This doesn't explain the many details surrounding the abandoned vehicle and the apparent efforts to avoid leaving evidence behind. Theory number 3, someone known to Jennifer. In many missing persons investigations, people close to the vehicle are examined first. Friends, co-workers, partners, family members, anyone close to the victim. Investigators reportedly explored possibilities early on. Yet, no evidence has publicly emerged suggesting anyone close to Jennifer was responsible. Most people familiar with the case view this theory as a lot less likely than the others. Theory number 4, there were multiple people involved. This theory has gained attention because of the logistics involved. Abducting someone, moving a vehicle, avoiding detection, and potentially disposing of evidence. Some observers believe more than one person may have participated. But once again, there is no public evidence confirming this, and without arrests, many questions remain unanswered. Nearly 20 years later, the mysterious figure captured abandoning Jennifer's car remains central to the case. And the longer you stare at the footage, the more frustrating it becomes. Because the answer just feels so close. The person is right there, walking directly in front of the camera. Visible yet somehow hidden at the same time. Investigators have long believed this individual possesses critical information. Whether they committed the crime themselves or simply moved the vehicle afterwards remains unknown. But one fact has never changed. Finding this person could potentially change everything. Imagine if someone watching this video right now recognized a walk, a posture, a mannerism, something unique. It's happened before in other cases. Sometimes the smallest detail breaks a mystery wide open. The challenge is that time continues to pass, and with each passing year, memories become less reliable. Jennifer Kesse disappeared in 2006. For some viewers, that may seem like ancient history. But for Jennifer's family, the loss is as real today as it is the day she vanished. Every birthday, every holiday, every family gathering, there's an empty seat, an unanswered question, a missing piece of their lives. And unlike cases where a body is discovered and somebody is identified, Jennifer's family continues living with uncertainty. No definitive answers, no explanation, no closure, just questions. And hope. Hope that someday someone will come forward. Hope that technology will reveal something investigators missed. Hope that Jennifer's story will one day finally have an ending. For years, it seemed like Jennifer Kesse's case had stalled. No arrests, no major suspects, and no definitive answers. But behind the scenes, investigators continued working. And as forensic technology improved, old evidence suddenly became worth revisiting. One of the most important developments in modern criminal investigation has been advances in DNA analysis. Evidence that was once considered unusable can now sometimes produce results. Samples that yielded nothing years ago can occasionally reveal new information. As a result, investigators have continued re-examining information connected to Jennifer's disappearance. The hope is simple. Maybe the answer has been sitting in storage all along, waiting for technology to catch up. Because history has shown even decades-old cold cases can be solved through advances in forensic science. Cases once considered impossible have suddenly been reopened. Suspects have been identified and families have finally received answers. And Jennifer's family hopes that her case will be next. As years passed, additional resources became involved in reviewing Jennifer's disappearance. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement, often called the FDLE, began taking a more active role in the case. Fresh investigators examined evidence. Old leads were reviewed. Potential persons of interest were reconsidered. This is often one of the biggest advances in cold case investigation. New investigators aren't burdened by years of assumptions. They can approach the evidence from a different perspective. Sometimes that leads nowhere. Other times, it reveals something everyone else missed. Officials have indicated that this case remains active. That means investigators still believe that answers are possible. And perhaps more importantly, they still believe that someone knows what happened. After nearly 2 decades of discussion, theories, documentaries, podcasts, and internet speculation, it's worth stepping back and asking a simple question. What do we actually know? Here's what can be established with reasonable confidence. Jennifer Kesse was a successful 24-year-old woman living in Orlando. She returned from vacation shortly before her disappearance. She spoke with family and her boyfriend on the evening of January 23, 2006. She appears to have begun her normal morning routine on January 24th. Everything beyond those facts enters the realm of theory. Could construction workers have been involved? Possibly. Could the crime have been committed by a stranger? Possibly. Could there be details investigators never released publicly? Almost certainly. But the reality is, many of the answers remain hidden. And that's exactly why the case continues to fascinate people around the world. Sometimes when a case becomes famous, people focus so much on the mystery that they forget there is a person in the center of it. Jennifer isn't just a case file. She isn't just surveillance footage. She isn't just an internet mystery. She was somebody's daughter, someone's sister, someone's girlfriend, someone's friend. She had plans, goals, dreams, people who loved her. And while the public sees a fascinating mystery, her family has spent nearly 2 decades living with uncertainty. No closure, no explanation, and no chance to move forward. Just unanswered questions. For many families of missing persons, that uncertainty can be one of the hardest parts. Not knowing, not understanding, and not having answers. And that's why Jennifer's family continues to fight for the truth. Nearly 20 years have passed since Jennifer Kesse disappeared. Yet her case remains one of the most perplexing unsolved mysteries. A successful young woman vanishes during her morning routine. Her vehicle is found abandoned. A mysterious individual is captured on camera, and despite years of investigation, nobody has been held accountable. Maybe the answer lies in the evidence that hasn't been fully analysed. Maybe someone has been keeping it secret for 2 decades. Or maybe the person responsible never imagined that Jennifer's story would continue receiving attention all these years later. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. Jennifer Kesse deserves answers, and her family deserves the truth. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more true crime cases, unsolved mysteries, and internet investigations. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!